Kim Soo walked into the huge classroom and felt very small. The chairs were made for beings much bigger than humans, so his feet did not touch the floor when he sat down. He pulled his bag closer and looked around at all the strange faces staring back at him. There were so many different kinds of aliens in the room. Some looked like walking flowers with petals instead of hair. Others were small and furry like teddy bears, but with 6 arms each. A few students looked like they were made of rock and crystal, glowing softly in the dim light. Near the back, some cloud-like beings floated in special glass containers filled with purple gas. All of them were looking at him with wide eyes. Some whispered each other in languages his translator could not understand. He heard the word human spoken in many different ways, and always made the other students move a little farther away from him. Sue knew why they were scared. Everyone in the galaxy had heard about Earth by now. They called it a death world because almost everything on his planet could kill most aliens. The air was poison to some species. The gravity was too strong for others. Even Earth's weather was considered extremely dangerous by galactic standards. The professor walked in, and the room became quiet. She was tall and thin with skin like glass that seemed to glow from inside. Her 4 arms moved like she was dancing as she set up her teaching materials. When she spoke, her voice sounded like music. "Welcome, students, to Advanced Xenobiology," Professor On said through the translation system. "Today we will study how different species interact in predator and prey relationships across the galaxy." Sue opened his notebook and started writing. He found the class interesting because Earth had so many examples of predators and prey. His home planet was famous for having some of the most dangerous hunters in known space. The other students seemed to relax a little when they saw him taking normal notes like everyone else. Maybe the human was not as scary as the story said. Maybe he was just another student trying to learn. That was when the classroom doors made a loud hissing sound. Everyone turned to look. The door slid open slowly, and something huge stepped through. It was at least 8 feet tall and covered in black armor that looked like it was grown instead of made. Sharp claws clicked on the floor with each step. Its head had multiple eyes like a spider, and they moved independently to look at different parts of the room. The creature was a Krillian, one of the most feared predator species in the galaxy. They came from a world where only the strongest survived, and they had built their entire society around hunting and fighting. Most civilized worlds considered them too dangerous for normal education programs. Every student in the room tried to make themselves smaller. The flower people folded their petals tightly. The furry creatures huddled together in groups. Even the rock people seemed to dim their inner light. Trying not to be noticed, the Krillians' many eyes swept across the classroom like searchlights. They paused on each group of students, and Sue could see them catalog every potential threat and weakness. This was clearly a being that saw everything around it as either prey or competition. Then those alien eyes found him. Sue felt the weight of that predatory gaze settle on him like a heavy blanket. The Krillian's head tilted slightly, studying the small human with obvious interest. Its claws extended a little, making tiny scratching sounds on the floor. Around the room, students were holding their breath. Some of the more sensitive species had started to shake with fear. The cloud beings had made their containers completely opaque, trying to hide inside their own gas. Everyone expected the human to show fear. After all, he was tiny compared to the massive predator. He had no claws, no armor, no visible weapons. He looked soft and breakable next to the walking tank that was studying him. Instead, Kim Soo looked up from his notes and smiled. It was not a big smile, just a small, friendly expression. The kind of smile someone might give to a new neighbor or classmate. His dark eyes were calm and interested, showing no sign of fear or worry. The Krillian's head pulled back slightly, its many eyes blinking in what might have been surprise. In all its experience, prey did not smile at predators. Prey ran or froze or tried to make themselves invisible. Prey did not look directly at a hunter and offer a friendly expression, but this small human was doing exactly that. Professor On cleared her throat gently, trying to get the class back on track. "Please find a seat so we can begin," she said to the new arrival. The Krillian moved to an empty chair, its eyes never leaving the human who had dared to smile at it. As it settled into its seat with metallic scraping sounds, Sue simply returned to his note-taking as if nothing unusual had happened. The other students looked between the two of them with confusion and growing worry. They could sense that something important had just occurred, but they did not understand what. All they knew was that the human had not shown fear, and the predator had not attacked. It was going to be a very interesting semester. The big alien's name was Thaxmore, and he did not like being confused. On his home planet, everything was simple. Strong creatures ate weak creatures. Big hunters scared small prey. Fear meant respect, and respect meant survival. But this human made no sense at all. Thaxmore had been thrown out of 3 different schools before coming here. Each time it was the same story. He would arrive, show his strength, and the other students would learn their place. The weak ones would stay away from him. The smart ones would bring him food and help with his work. The really scared ones would just leave the school completely. It always worked the same way. Until now, Kim Sue seemed to have no idea how dangerous Thaxmore was. Every morning, the human would walk into class and wave at him like they were old friends. When Thaxmore sat behind him and breathed heavily on his neck, Sue would turn around and ask if he wanted to borrow a pen. "Maybe you cannot see my study notes from back there," Sue said one day, holding up his tablet. "Wanted to send you a copy?" Thaxmore's claws scratched deep marks in his desk. This was not how prey was supposed to act. He decided to try harder. During lunch, he would stand very close to Sue's table, blocking the light with his huge body. His claws would click menacingly on the metal surface. Other students would grab their food and run to eat somewhere else. But Sue would just look up and smile. "Hey, Thaxmore, the food line is really long today. You can have some of mine if you are hungry." It was the same every day. The human offered to share his terrible food, asked about Thaxmore's classes, and even tried to include him in study groups with other students. The other aliens were too scared to say no when the human suggested it, but they would sit as far away as possible and speak in whispers. Thaxmore began to think the human was making fun of him. No creature could be this friendly to something that wanted to hurt it. The human had to be playing some kind of game, pretending to be nice while secretly planning something clever and mean. So Thaxmore started breaking things. First, it was small accidents. Sue's stylus would snap when Thaxmore walked by his desk. His tablet would have claw marks across the screen. His books would be torn in half and left on the floor. Each time, Sue would just sigh quietly and get a replacement from the school supply office. He never complained to the teachers. He never got angry. He would just clean up the mess and continue with his work. "My stuff breaks a lot, too," Sue told him once while picking up pieces of a destroyed data pad. "Earth makes everything really tough, but it still falls apart sometimes. That is why humans learn to fix things quickly." This made Thaxmore even more angry. The human was definitely making fun of him now. No one could be this calm about having their property destroyed. The breaking point came during biology lab. Students were working in pairs to study alien plant samples under microscopes. Sue had been paired with a nervous little creature that looked like a purple mouse with wings. They were working quietly together, taking notes and sharing observations. Thaxmore walked over and stood behind them. His shadow fell across their workstation like a dark cloud. The mouse creature started shaking so badly it could not hold its stylus. "You are in my seat," Thaxmore said to Sue, even though the seats were not assigned. "Oh, sorry about that," Sue replied, not looking up from the microscope. "There is an empty station right over there. Or you can work with us if you want. We are looking at some really interesting root structures." The casual dismissal made something snap in Thaxmore's brain. His claws shot out to their full length, each one sharp enough to cut through metal. With one swift motion, he swept them across the workstation, sending the microscope samples and notes flying across the room. The crash was loud enough to make everyone in the lab freeze. The mouse creature fainted and fell off its stool. Other students backed away until they hit the walls, their eyes wide with terror. Professor On started moving toward them, but she was on the other side of the room. Security would take minutes to arrive. In that time, the angry Krillian could hurt many people. But Sue just sat there, looking at the destroyed equipment scattered on the floor. His expression was not angry or scared. He looked thoughtful, like he was trying to solve an interesting puzzle. "You know," he said quietly, "you remind me of my neighbor's dog back home." Thaxmore's claws stopped moving. "What?" "Big, scary-looking dog. Always barking and showing its teeth at everyone. All the other animals in the neighborhood were terrified of it." Sue started picking up pieces of the broken microscope. Took me a while to figure out that it was just lonely and did not know how to make friends. The room was completely silent, except for the sound of Sue cleaning up the mess. Every eye was on the two of them, waiting to see what would happen next. Thaxmore felt something strange in his chest. It was not anger anymore. It was something else, something he had never felt before. The human had just compared him to a lonely animal, but somehow it did not feel like an insult. It felt like understanding. The cafeteria was the biggest room in the whole school. It had to be huge because it fed thousands of students from hundreds of different worlds. Some aliens needed hot food, others needed cold food. Some breathed air, others needed special gas. Some ate plants, some ate meat, and some ate things that no one else could even identify. Kim Soo sat at his usual table in the back corner, eating his lunch quietly. Other students had learned to stay away from his table, not because they were scared of him, but because his food scared them. Today he had strips of meat from something called a tiger shark. Most aliens had never heard of sharks, but when they looked them up, they discovered that Earth's oceans were full of giant killing machines with rows of razor teeth. The fact that humans not only swam in the same water as these monsters, but actually caught them and ate them, was terrifying to most species. He also had vegetables that were bright red and made his eyes water. The school's food scanners had warned that these chili peppers contained chemicals that could burn holes in some alien skin. But Sue ate them like candy. For dessert, he had cut up pieces of something called pineapple. The school's database said it was so acidic that it would dissolve protective shells of 12 different species. Sue had put extra pieces on his lunch tray. Most days he ate alone. Today was different. A huge shadow fell across his table, blocking out the lights above. Thaxmore stood there, all 8 feet of him, with his claws fully extended. His many eyes were focused on Sue like laser beams, and his breathing sounded like an angry engine. The entire cafeteria went quiet. Conversation stopped in the middle of words. Even the kitchen staff stopped working to stare at what was happening. Everyone knew that Thaxmore had been getting more and more angry at the human, who would not show fear. "You think you are clever, little creature," Thaxmore said. His voice was loud enough that everyone could hear it, even without the translation system. "You mock me every day with your smiles and your kindness. You make me look weak in front of others." Sue looked up from his lunch and blinked. "I do not think you are weak at all. You are obviously very strong. Then why do you not fear me?" Thaxmore leaned down until his face was close to Sue's. His claws dug deep scratches in the metal table. "Every creature with sense runs from my kind. We are hunters. We are killers. We are death walking on legs." "That sounds very impressive," Sue said, taking another bite of his burning hot peppers. "Would you like to sit down? This pineapple is really good today." The casual response made Thaxmore even more angry. With one swift movement, he swept his claws across the table, trying to knock Sue's food tray to the floor. But the human had quick reflexes. He caught the tray and moved it safely to the side before the claws could hit it. "Okay," Sue said calmly, setting his lunch down on the bench beside him. "I think I understand what is happening here." He pulled out his personal tablet and turned it so Thaxmore could see the screen. With a few touches, he brought up a video file from his home planet. "This is Earth," he said simply. The video started playing, and Thaxmore's many eyes focused on the small screen. At first, he saw what looked like a normal world. There were blue oceans, white clouds, and green forests. It did not look like the death planet he had heard about. Then the video changed. Suddenly, the screen showed humans running across burning deserts where the temperature was hot enough to cook most aliens. They were not just surviving. They were racing each other, competing to see who could run the farthest in the deadly heat. The next clip showed humans diving into freezing water, swimming under thick ice where the cold would kill most species in minutes. They were not trying to escape from something. they were doing for fun. Then came the storms. Faxmore watched in amazement as humans stood outside in weather that looked like the end of the world. Wind that could blow spaceships off course, rain that fell like bullets, and lightning that could split mountains. The humans were not hiding. They were taking pictures. "This is a hurricane," Sue explained. "They happen every year on Earth. Most humans just board up their windows and wait for them to pass." More videos followed. Humans climbing mountains, so tall that there was no air to breathe at the top. Humans exploring caves so deep that the pressure would crush most alien species. Humans living in places so cold that water turned solid, or so hot that metal melted. But the strangest part was what came next. The video showed Earth's animals, and Thaxmore could not believe what he was seeing. Creatures with teeth longer than his claws. Beasts that could run faster than most vehicles. Monsters that could swallow a Kryllian whole without chewing. And humans lived right next to all of them. "We share our planet with all of these," Sue said quietly. "Some of them hunt us sometimes. We hunt some of them sometimes. But mostly we just try to get along together." The last video showed something that made Thaxmore's claws retract in shock. It was a human child, maybe half of Sue's size, playing with a creature that looked like a smaller version of himself. The animal had sharp teeth and claws, and it could obviously kill the child easily. But they were friends. "That is my little sister with our dog," Sue said with a small smile. "His name is Rex, and he protects our family." Thaxmore stared at the screen, trying to understand what he had just seen. The field trip was supposed to be safe and educational. All the students would visit the dangerous wildlife preserve in Sector 7, where the galaxy's most feared creatures live behind strong energy barriers. They could observe and learn about predators from different worlds without any real danger. Professor On led the group through the main corridor, pointing out different exhibits through the thick protective glass. Here was a shadow stalker from the dark moon of Zirion, a creature made of living darkness with claws that could cut through solid metal. There was a flame serpent from the volcanic world of Pyros, its body burning so hot that it melted the special containment walls every few months. The students stayed close together in a nervous cluster, taking notes and pictures from a safe distance. Even Thaxmore seemed impressed by some of the creatures they saw. These were predators that could give even a Kryllian hunter trouble. Kim Sue walked to the back of the group, reading information about each animal on his tablet. He found it interesting how different worlds had created such different types of hunters. Some relied on speed, others on strength, and some on abilities that seemed almost like magic. The barriers used triple-layered energy fields, Professor On explained as they stopped in front of the most dangerous exhibit. Each layer is strong enough to stop a military vehicle. The creatures inside cannot possibly escape. The exhibit contains something called a Void Stalker, a nightmare creature from the edge of known space. It looked like smoke given shape and hunger, with eyes like burning stars and claws that could phase in and out of solid matter. Most species had legends about creatures like this, but few had ever seen one in person. As they watched, the lights in the corridor began to flicker. Power fluctuation. Professor On said, checking her communicator. "Nothing to worry about. The backup systems will handle it." But the lights flickered again, and this time they heard a sound that made everyone freeze. It was a low hum of energy barriers powering down. Red warning lights began flashing throughout the facility. An automated voice filled the corridor. Emergency protocols activated. Containment breach detected. All personnel proceed to nearest exit immediately. Through the transparent walls, they could see the Void Stalker's cage beginning to open. Panic hit the group like a wave. Students scattered in every direction, their various panic responses filling the air with sounds and smells that only made things worse. The flower-like beings folded themselves into tight buds and tried to root themselves to the floor. The small furry creatures ran in circles, squeaking in terror. The rock people became completely still, hoping the predator would think they were part of the building. The Void Stalker flowed out of its containment like liquid shadow, its burning eyes scanning for prey. It could sense fear, and the corridor was full of it. The creature's form shifted and changed as it moved, sometimes solid, sometimes like smoke, always deadly. Most of the students were running toward the main exit, but a group of the small mouse-like beings had gotten confused and run the wrong way. They were now trapped in a dead-end corridor with the Void Stalker moving toward them like a dark tide. Thaxmore watched from his position near the emergency exit, his every instinct telling him to run. Even Krillian hunters knew better than to face a Void Stalker without weapons and backup. But something made him pause and look back. Sue was not running. The human was walking slowly toward the trapped students, his movements calm and deliberate. He had no weapons, no armor, no special powers. He was just a small person from Earth, facing down one of the galaxy's most feared predators. "Hey!" Sue called out the creature in a quiet, steady voice. "Over here." The Void Stalker turned toward him, its star-bright eyes focusing on this new target. Sue raised his hands, palms open, showing he was not armed. Then he began to move in a strange pattern, stepping left and right in a rhythm that seemed to catch the creature's attention. "That's it," he said softly. "Focus on me. Just me." Thaxmore realized what the human was doing. He was making himself the biggest threat in the creature's mind, drawing its attention away from the helpless students. But he was not doing it with aggression or challenge. He was doing it with calm confidence, like someone who had faced dangerous animals many times before. Sue began to back away slowly, still moving in that hypnotic pattern. The Void Stalker followed him, drawn by his steady presence and lack of fear. Step by step, the human led the creature away from the trapped students and toward the empty part of the corridor. Behind them, the mouse-like beings huddled together but began moving toward safety. Professor On's voice came over the communication system. "Security teams are on their way. Emergency containment will be restored in 2 minutes." 2 minutes felt like forever. Sue continued his careful dance with the Void Stalker, never taking his eyes off the creature, never showing fear or panic. When it moved too close, he would shift position. When it tried to circle around him, he would block its path. He was not fighting it or trying to hurt it. He was simply managing it, like a shepherd managing a dangerous animal. Thaxmore watched in amazement as the small human demonstrated something he had never seen before. This was not the crude dominance that Krillians used or the desperate aggression of cornered prey. This was the quiet confidence of a true apex predator, one that did not need to prove its strength because it knew exactly what it was capable of. The security barrier snapped back into place with a sharp electrical sound, trapping the Void Stalker in a new containment field. Sue stepped back and let out a long, slow breath. Everyone was safe. That evening, Sue sat alone in the observatory deck, looking out at the stars to the giant glass dome above. The room was quiet and peaceful after the excitement of the day. He had a new meal with him, something that looked like soup but smelled like it could clean metal. He was reading about Krillian culture on his tablet when he heard heavy footsteps behind him. The sound of claws clicking on the floor told him exactly who was coming. Thaxmore approached slowly, not with his usual threatening posture, but carefully, like someone visiting a friend in the hospital. His many eyes looked uncertain, something Sue had never seen before. "May I sit?" Thaxmore asked. Sue looked up and smiled, the same friendly smile he had been giving to Krillian since the first day. "Of course. Want some soup? It is pretty spicy." Thaxmore settled his huge frame into one of the reinforced chairs nearby. For a moment, they sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the endless field of stars. "I do not understand you," Thaxmore said finally. "Everything about you makes no sense to my mind." "What do you mean?" Sue asked, setting down his tablet. "You are small and soft, with no claws or armor. You should be prey. But today you faced a Void Stalker like it was just another animal from your world." Thaxmore's claws clicked nervously on the arm of his chair. "You show no fear, but you are not stupid. You could have died today, but you chose to protect others instead of yourself." Sue thought about this while taking another spoonful of his soup. Steam rose from the bowl, and the smell made Thaxmore's eyes water slightly. "On Earth we have a saying," Sue said. "The loudest dog in the yard is usually not the most dangerous one." "I do not understand." "The really dangerous dogs do not need to bark and show their teeth all the time. They just are what they are." Sue gestured toward the stars. "Humans survived on Earth not because we were the biggest or strongest animals. We survived because we learned to think differently." Thaxmore leaned forward, interested despite himself. How differently. Most predators see the world as hunters and prey, strong and weak, win or lose. Sue pointed to different stars in the sky. But humans learned that sometimes the best way to survive is to help others survive too. That makes no sense. The weak should serve the strong. But what if the weak ones know something you do not know? What if they can do things you cannot do? Sue pulled up a new video on his tablet. Look at this. The video showed humans working together to build something huge, a city that stretched as far as the eye could see. But as the video played, Thaxmore could see that the humans were not all the same. Some were big and strong, others were small and quick. Some were old, others were young. They were all different, but they were all working together. The big humans could not build this alone, Sue explained. They needed the small ones to work in tight spaces. They needed the old ones who knew how things worked. They needed the young ones who had new ideas. Everyone was important. But someone had to be in charge. Someone had to be the leader. Yes, but not always the same someone. Sometimes the strongest person was the leader. Sometimes it was the smartest person. Sometimes it was the person who was best at talking to others. Sue closed the tablet. We learned that being the leader was not about being the most dangerous. It was about helping everyone do their best work. Thaxmore was quiet for a long time, thinking about this. It went against everything he had been taught since he was small. Your smile, he said finally. When you first saw me, you smiled. I thought you were mocking me. I was not mocking you. I was recognizing you. Recognizing me as what? As another predator. Sue's smile was warm and genuine. On Earth, when two dangerous animals meet, they have choices. They can fight, they can run away, or they can decide to respect each other and share the same territory. You chose to share territory with me. I chose to give you the chance to be more than just a hunter. Sue finished his soup and set the bowl aside. You are smart, Thaxmore. You are strong. You could use those gifts to help others instead of scaring them. Thaxmore looked out the stars again, seeing them differently now. For his entire life, he had thought strength meant making others afraid. But this small human had shown real strength by protecting the weak, even when it put him in danger. I have been expelled from 3 schools, Thaxmore admitted. Everyone said I was too aggressive, too dangerous to be around other students. Maybe they just did not know how to help you use your strength in better ways. And you think you know how? Sue laughed, a sound that was not mocking but genuinely happy. I think we can figure out together. That is what friends do, right? The word friends hung in the air between them. Thaxmore had never had a friend before. On his world, you had allies who help you hunt, or enemies who try to hunt you. Friends were something he had only heard about in stories from other planets. I would like that, he said quietly. Outside the dome, the stars continued their ancient dance, lighting the way for 2 very different predators who had chosen to become something better together. The next morning, other students were surprised to see Thaxmore helping carry supplies for a group project, his claws carefully controlled to avoid damaging anything. When someone dropped their books, he picked them up gently instead of stepping over them. And Kim Sue continued to smile, knowing that sometimes the most dangerous creatures made the most loyal friends.